get everybody back in motion. Okay.
Can I borrow Mark's pen? Thank you.
We have Sarah on there? Okay.
I am here.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Yes, we do. Good evening. I'm going to call the July 22nd meeting of the school committee to order. Before I do that, I need to make a quick announcement that we have one of our members participating remotely. Senator McLaughlin is participating via phone. Per the rules, you have to be able to hear her, and she has to be able to hear you. And she's over the speaker, and she can hear through the microphone. So if anybody is to speak, they need to make sure they speak through the microphones, so that goes back in that direction as well. We do have a quorum here, including myself as the chair. So in compliance with open meeting law, we are allowed to proceed as such. The one caveat to that is that every vote we take has to be a roll call vote. That includes our kickoff. So with that said, roll call attendance for who's in the meeting. And I will start with Sarah.
Here.
Aaron.
Here.
John. Here. Chuck.
Here.
Carla.
Here.
Tom. Here. Okay, so we have all 6 members in attendance. And today's agenda is pretty packed, both with some exciting agenda items and some items that we just need to take care of and address. So we have the agenda as it's outlined, with routine matters covering public comment, the consent agenda, and reports. We then have personnel action covering the Director of Finance search process, review and approval, the appointment of the superintendent to collaborative boards, including SEAM and North Shore, the superintendent entry plan, the superintendent review timeline discussion. And then we will move to new business, which includes the declaration of additional surplus equipment, the response to complaint brought against a public individual, school committee brochure, and the 13th annual Reading Fall Street Fair. Now, before I do that, we are going to take one item out of order, and that's in respect to a guest that we have this evening, Chris McGrath, who is Tom's mentor with the MASC new Superintendent Induction Program. And so I will ask for a motion now.
Move to take agenda item C.3, Superintendent Entry Plan, out of order to respect the time of Chris McGrath, Dr. Milishevsky's coach for the new Superintendent Induction Program.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Carla. We'll do a roll call again on that. Sarah?
Aye.
Carla?
Aye.
Chuck?
Aye.
Sean?
Aye.
Aaron?
Aye.
And Tom? Aye. So we have 6 there. So Tom, the floor is yours, sir.
Great. Thank you. Well, good evening, Reading community. So I will start by talking about my entry plan, my strategy and approach for how I will begin my time as superintendent here in Reading. But before I dive too deep in that, I would like to introduce Chris McGrath. So as Tom shared, Chris, I'm very fortunate to have her as my superintendent coach. Myself, along with over 35 new superintendents in Massachusetts, are each paired with a new superintendent coach. I'm very fortunate to be matched with Chris McGrath, who is very well known in the area. If you don't know Chris, she was the superintendent in Tewksbury for 19 years. In addition to that, she is now the director of operations for MASS. So I know Chris wanted to share a few words about the new superintendent induction program and also just what our coaching relationship would look like as well. So,
The podium, please. And while she does that, I regret that I forgot to introduce Dr. Sarah Hardy, our new Assistant Superintendent for Learning and Teaching. Thank you for joining us this evening. And
Good evening,
everybody knows CFO Gail Dowd.
First, let me just say, it is truly an honor to be here in the Patrick Scatini Library Media Center. Pat was a very dear friend, and I had great admiration for him and learned a lot from him. So this is a super honor for me. The new superintendent's induction program is beginning its 12th year. And I've had the privilege of coaching in this program for 11, now going on 12 years. There are 3 primary objectives to the program. First is to further develop. You have a very well-developed toolbox in your superintendent, but to further develop the leadership skills of the superintendent by supporting his effort to be strategic. Heavens knows these are very challenging times, and having a strategy is imperative. Second, to support the teaching and learning efforts in the Reading Public Schools by the development of, I will call it a successor theory of action, because I know Dr. Doherty developed a highly effective theory of action with strategic objectives and initiatives. And third, to develop the leadership capacity of the Reading administrative leadership team, and to support the capacity of that team and the development of the governance partnership with the Reading School Committee and with the Reading Teacher Union. How do we do that? We will have, in a traditional environment, we would have 8 full content days. We had 1 full content day last Monday. That schedule is evolving, and it will probably be a hybrid between a few full-day sessions for that interpersonal contact among the new superintendents, but some of the sessions will be remote. I will attend leadership team meetings, and I will provide Tom with feedback using a leadership team rubric to measure the functionality of the team and the progress that the team is making in leading the district. I will meet individually with Tom, and my favorite part is we will conduct school visits together, and I will observe Tom giving feedback to your principals about what we observed. If I had the opportunity to participate in this program, trust me when I tell you, I needed it in year 1, and I needed it in year 19. So it's an honor to be here tonight and to share information about the program. I want to just add one comment. I notice in your packet, Tom has included a very detailed review of the process for the evaluation of the superintendent. Not included with your material tonight, but in existence is, I believe it's Appendix E, and it encourages school committees working with their superintendent to incorporate work in the new superintendent's induction program, participating in the activities as I've described them, completing the assignments in the program, and to have the new superintendent have that goal, that participation as the professional practice goal. So when you have a chance, you may just want to take a peek. I believe it's Appendix E. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you for that as well, and the addition, that helps us as well.
My pleasure.
Looking around, Sarah, do you have any questions?
No, thank you, Tom.
Okay. Any other board members? Sean?
Just one. You mentioned going through a scoring rubric and evaluating his leadership team and development team. I assume that's for his development. It doesn't result in a document that's, becomes something that's shared with us or the community.
No.
It's purely for his development. Right?
That's right.
Great.
That's right. It's the commitment to continuous improvement for the new superintendent across the 3 years of the program.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sure, Chuck?
Thank you.
And happy birthday to you.
You beat us to it, man.
Thank you. So you mentioned I think you said 8 sessions. How long do you go right through the budget process and our evaluation process, or when is your work done, I guess?
It's 3 years.
Oh, okay.
So it's the equivalent of 8 content days in year 1, 6 content days in year 2, and then we move into a consultancy group model with problems of practice. So in year 3, Tom would be grouped with the other superintendents from the North Shore with a coach, and the model is, I think it's monthly. But in terms of budget development, our program, our curriculum focuses on leadership development. Now, I know as a superintendent, you know as a school committee, budget is critically important. So the Mass Association of School Superintendents offers webinars specifically on school finance, the technical side of the operation. We're more focused on the leadership and the adaptive side. But we know budget is important.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Carla?
Did you say year 3? Did you say there was something in year
It's
3?
a 3-year program.
So, you said 8 full content days in year 1, 6 full content days in year 2, And then year 3 was
Year
group.
3, I believe we have 4 content days, and then this monthly consultancy meeting, which is about 2 hours in duration.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, Tom, back to you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And in terms of, I'm going to walk through my entry plan and have something to show up here. In terms of just making this accessible with the video screen, is there a preference whether I sit, whether I stand? I know getting back into the in-person is a shift, so
I think we're okay with everything.
either way, okay.
As long as Sarah can hear you, so you might have to do the presentation from the pulpit.
From the pulpit, okay.
Do you want to?
I can do it from up there, that's fine.
I can hear Tom.
Yeah, he's moving though, Sarah, so.
Okay, but I can hear him where he wants to, so that's fine.
Just as this is loading, just again, a huge thank you to Chris in advance. I think an incredible opportunity for me stepping into the role to have this level of support, mentorship, coaching on the ground as we're working through all of the challenges faced by, in the superintendent role. So just very fortunate to have someone who's done it for 19 years, and done it for 19 years very well. So very excited to work and partner with Chris. So my first day as superintendent writing, I shared a draft of my entry plan, which outlined in writing just how I was thinking about starting my time in writing, and how that outlining how that would evolve over my first year in the role. So tonight I'd just like to provide an overview of what's in that written document and answer any questions or have any feedback from the community on just what that looks like. So it looks like So Scott and I are working through just the technical piece here, so thank you. Just like before I even dive into the content, just thank the community. I've been here 3 weeks, and I feel just such a warm welcome from the entire community. Looking in the audience now, there's people I've already heard from, met with. I just feel there has been a very caring, open, welcoming environment in the entire community, and I really appreciate that. I'm very, very excited to be in this wonderful community, so thank you. So as you'll see in the written entry plan, there's several goals for how I'm approaching this process. You can go through the first 2, Scott. Poor Scott didn't know he would be front and center, so thank you for stepping in for us. As I'm in sort of this process, front and center is developing relationships with both the school community, and stakeholders across the community, students, staff, families, community partners. These relationships are critical to create the foundation for the collaborative work that's ahead. So that's front and center. Also trying to work with the school committee to set year 1 leadership goals. So what does success look like for me in year 1, and how does that match with the entry plan and the strategic plan in the district? Trying to work with our community to understand what are the strengths that make Reading unique, and what are ways that we can build on those. What are the challenges that the district faces, and what are some ways that we can address those? And also, what are the opportunities? If we want Reading to be in 3-5 years where we want it to be, what are the things that we can do to get us there? What are those opportunities waiting for us? And then last 2, Scott, go ahead. And then also trying to hear what I learned from the community in this process after I learn about strengths, challenges, and opportunities to help us shape goals, priorities, strategic actions, and then use that to reshape and revise our strategic plan. So as you'll see, this is a collaborative process where my goal is to use the thoughts, the ideas, the feedback from the community to drive where we're going in both a vision and a plan for getting there for the future of Reading Public Schools. So divided up into 4 different phases, you'll see. I'm going to quickly provide an overview of sort of what's happening in each of these phases. So you see from back when I was named in late February, early March, to the end of the school year, what are sort of the things that are going on in the entry process. And I should name that this is work that's going on while I am leading the day-to-day management and operations of the district. First, pre-entry, phase 1. So again, I felt really fortunate that I had a long runway of time from late February, early March to now. That gave me the opportunity to start to learn about the community and to start to get involved a little bit in the community and to prepare to try to have as seamless of a transition as possible. So during that phase, what was I doing? First thing was trying to build relationships with both the school committee, principals, and central office leadership through just informal one-to-one meetings. Be a part and consult in the hiring processes of both district and school-based leadership roles. So I felt that all of the hiring processes, these spring and summer, were collaborative processes between myself, Dr. Doherty, Ms. Dowd, Dr. Stice. And I have to say, on a side note here, just how excited I am about how those processes ended and the quality of people that we've been able to bring in on our team to match really the tremendous people that we have. So all of those collaborative hiring processes, I think, yielded some really awesome people that we brought to our team. Tried to obviously be in part of the town meetings, community meetings to learn sort of how the community operates, and then also engage in a series of transition meetings with Dr. Doherty, who, again, I shared this in my initial communication, just really thankful to Dr. Doherty for how he approached this leadership transition. He went above and beyond to spend time with me, to help onboard me with some of the smaller things, and also talk me through just sort of the things, the lessons learned from his time in Reading. So a huge thank you to him, and I think that's been instrumental in allowing me to come in feeling a little bit more comfortable and ready to lead because of his work. So a huge thank you to Dr. Doherty. Now, I think, which is the most exciting part about the entry, and I think the most important part, is this idea of a phase 2 and listening and learning. So I think you'll hear the phrase a lot. It's, hit the ground running. Right? I think there's things that certainly I've hit the ground running and I have to. Right? But I also think it's really important to hit the ground learning, right? And hit the ground listening. If I don't have a good understanding of the community and what the community needs, it's going to be very difficult for me to try to lead the community forward. So this phase is all about me trying to deeply understand the community and then to get our community around having a shared understanding of this. So how am I going to do this? The first is to meet with our central office staff to try to say, what are the structures we have in place? What are the systems we have in place, practices, and how are those things working? Whether they're operational, whether around teaching and learning, but really trying to develop a deep understanding of how the district operates. Second piece is leading one-to-one and group meetings. And this is the time where I'm able to learn from perspectives of the people who know the work the best. Teachers, students, school committee, principals, staff, community members, everyone who day to day lives this work. So hearing what are the strengths, what are the challenges, what are the opportunities. I would like to share a lot of this I'm going to lead come the fall. You see the windows July to January. I want to give people space and time in the summer with their families. So I've tried not to push on too many of these up front. With that said, I am here, I'm available, I'm ready to meet one-to-one with people. I've met so far about 30 one-to-one meetings and probably about a dozen group meetings thus far. So I'm eager to meet with people, but also a lot of that will be coming in the fall when we get into more of a routine. And then last piece, if I want to lead the schools, especially try to, improve the quality of teaching and learning in schools, I really need to know what's happening in schools. You will see, for me as a leader, I will be in schools consistently. You can count on seeing me at arrival, dismissal, in the hallways, in the cafeteria. Your students will know who I am. So I will be, along with our central office team, a presence in school. And I think in addition to that, something that our team is going to do is lead full-day visits to each of the school communities. So we will be in the school for a full day. The principal will design a full day for us. It could be a shadow a student. It could be to pick a schedule for us to really try to learn, what is this school like? So as you see through all of this work, I'm hopeful that come January, I feel confident to say I have a good understanding of what sort of Reading is all about. What are the strengths? What are the challenges? What are the opportunities? And I hope you all see that this is a collaborative process driven by your ideas and your input as well. So once I gather all that information, I will try to sort that and organize that and to say, here's the trends from what I've learned, from my time in school, from our meetings as central office staff, from my entry interview meetings. Here's all the things that we've learned about the community. And then share that out with the community and help to try to make some sense of it. So now that we sort of come to a shared understanding of sort of strengths, challenges, opportunities, where do we go from here? And I think that comes to the last phase, is using that information to set some district goals, to then get a team together to say, if this is where we're going, what's a plan to get there? And then make sure that that's reflected in the strategic plan. So overall, through this process, I'm really hopeful to develop relationships with the community. I am really hopeful to learn about what makes Reading unique and special. And I'm really excited about, as we move forward, working with the community to collaborate on a new vision and a plan for the future of Reading. A couple things that you can count on from me, I think, through this process. 3 things. I think you can count on this being a collaborative process. I think you can count on my leadership being collaborative, and you can count on from, how I go about operating and leading these meetings, and then the process of making sense of them, to this be an us joint effort. I think the second thing you can count on is that there is going to be, the ultimate goal here is excellence, and we are going to set a high bar for what excellence looks like. So ultimately, we want to make sure that every child is on track to achieve excellence, whatever that means for them. And the last piece, you can count on us talking and focusing on equity. And what that means is making sure that every child has what they need to be successful, right? We'll work out all the content as we move forward. We'll, see what the trends will bring. I will update the community consistently. It's not going to be come January, here's a surprise sort of reveal of the trends, but it's an ongoing update of things that I'm learning. But also wanted to be clear, our work is going to be focused on building collaborative systems, making sure that we have systems in place to ensure equity and excellence for all of our students. So now what? Again, a lot of this work will start in the fall once we gather and gear up for the start of the school year. At the same time, as I shared, we are available as a central office staff to meet with you now. We are very eager to meet with you. I want to just highlight 2 things that we're going to launch just as a chance to connect with us. This is not for us to really just sit and learn yet. This is just a chance to say hello, learn about you, learn about your students, learn about your students in your class. All different things for us, just that informal meet and greet. So first, for the community, tomorrow we're going to send an email out to the community that outlines a series of meet and greets. We're going to be sort of as a central office staff going to each of the schools, school playgrounds, one school tennis court, one school parking lot, different spots where we're just going to have informal drop-in times for us to meet and greet with anyone who wants to come say hello. Some people on our team think it's going to be small attendance. Some people think 2,000. So I'm hopeful that we are close to the 2,000 per event. We'll see. We'll see who's right in there. But very, very eager to meet with people. So please, as you see that, we would love to see you and see your families. And also tomorrow we'll be sending out a note to staff about staff office hours. There'll be a chance for staff to come meet one-on-one or in groups, either virtually or face-to-face, just to hear what's on your mind, just to connect and chat. So again, more information on that to come. If you can't make those, no pressure. There will be plenty of opportunities to engage and interact come the fall, but we did want everyone to know that we are here to meet with people as they would like, and we're very eager to meet with you too. So I'll pause there and open it up for feedback and thoughts. And again, just thank you for the warm welcome thus far. I am very eager to collaborate with this great community. Thank you.
Okay, looking around, any committee members have a question? Carl?
Thanks, Tom and Tom. Tom, M, under your phase 4 for planning, can you just talk a little bit more about the guiding coalition? You're talking about like certain groups of people or a group of people?
That's a great question. So in the plan, Carl's referring to a spot where it says that after the school committee helps us to set some goals of where we're going, my next step is to convene a guiding coalition, what we call it, of people who help us figure out how are we going to achieve those goals. And I think that committee should be comprised of people who can drive that work forward. So a group that reflects sort of the diversity of our community. I imagine it having teachers. I imagine it having parents. I imagine it having students. I imagine it having school committee representation, community representation. So a group that is large enough to be reflective, and also at the same time, not too large where it's difficult to sort of get some momentum. And that's a committee or a coalition that will be providing consistent updates to the community to make sure we're on the right track in our work.
Great, thanks.
Anything else? Okay. Mr. Robinson, you have a question?
Yes. Thank you, Tom. In your presentation, you mentioned the staff and yourself visiting each school for a day. Can you talk about how is that going to be a set process, or is that going to be determined based on the school or what you expect to obtain from that?
Yeah, great question. So what we're hoping is that in terms of what we hope to attain is that by spending a full day, not just popping into a couple classrooms, you'll really get a good understanding of just what sort of systems are in place in the school for just how the school operates, get an idea of how the culture sort of is like, get an idea for what the day-to-day student experience is like, what learning looks like in the classroom, and just to get a feel for what makes that school unique. And I think sometimes it has to be that extended window of time to really understand that. Now, in terms of how we'll structure it, I guess this is a little bit of we're letting the cat out of the bag early, so principals will be fine. So it's just the principals know their school best. So we ask them, design a day for us where we'll be able to learn the most about your school community. And in the past, when I've done this, it's been some principals have us follow one child all day, even maybe with a backpack on, so we know what it's like to live in a student's shoes. Other principals may prefer for you to spend a little bit of time at each grade level. Other principals may prefer for you to, meet with a group of parents, then meet with a group of students. So it's just however they feel we can develop the best understanding of the school community is sort of how the day will be structured. You'll see if you've also reviewed Dr. Hardy's entry plan, this is also in her entry plan. Right now, we're sort of, in conversations about whether our days will be separate or if it makes sense for us to both go on the same day, even with Dr. Stice, for us to then calibrate on sort of what we learned. So those are details that we'll share once we sort of roll those out.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Robbins, you may see me sitting in a small chair or other things like that, playing kickball maybe, those things that they're fun.
I don't have a question. I just want to make a comment. And I've reiterated this to you, but I want to say publicly that I'm so excited about this plan. I'm so excited to have you here and your new team members. I think this is so reflective of what our school community needs right now. I appreciate how much time you're investing in learning about Reading schools, but also the listening piece, I think, is so vital. And for so long, I think, I just think parents and staff and everyone are ready to be listened to and ready to have a voice in our school system. And I'm just really excited to see where this goes and to see what we all learn together. So thank you for this.
Thank you.
Okay, Sarah, is there anything there for you?
No, but thank you.
Okay. I'll close as well with, echoing Aaron to an extent, but also adding that the evidence of this document is already evidence of collaboration. Because you took the time to meet with each one of us and go through it. It's your document, but you've already received that feedback. And I think the demonstration of who you are comes through as well, right? The core of who you are from a collaboration perspective, from a listening perspective. I think, phase 2, from a listening and learning perspective, you've also mentioned that you'll be meeting more with the town manager. You've already been meeting with the chief of police, the fire chief, etc. Maybe with some select board members, just to get to know more than just the schools, but get to know Reading, right? And get to know Reading at its core. And I'm so excited to where we can go. I was going to say some of this in my report, but I've had chances, thanks to you, to meet with some of the new administration as well. And my excitement level can't be higher, frankly, with what we're trying to achieve. And that leadership, I'm so looking forward to seeing where we go. So thank you for the time that you put into this, even before you were here, even before you were on payroll officially, right? And the effort you're putting into it, and it shows on a day-by-day basis.
Thank you. I'd like to just close by thanking Scott, too. I know he was not expecting to come in and change slides, so thank you for stepping up and doing that for us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Oh, do we have oh yes, you're not quite off the hot seat yet, because the public does have a chance to ask questions. But please put your name and address and step to the mic to ask the question.
Hi, Mary Ann Downing, Heather Drive. Welcome, Dr. Milashevsky. I know we've spoken before in your interviews, and I would just echo what Erin said. I think the school visits are a good idea, and in fact, I think both Erin and I have experienced at Parker. They have a parent visit day where you spend a whole day with your kid, walk in their schedule, you eat lunch from the cafeteria. I mean, it's exhausting, and there's just nothing like that experience. I think that's a great idea. So my question for you is, you're not the only new one here, and when I talk to parent friends in the community, it's not really a concern, it's a wondering. You have 3 new principals, a new assistant superintendent, there'll be a new finance director, there's a new MECO director. what are you doing with the team to kind of get them all to work together as a team? Because you have a whole plan out and you're bringing them all along, but they all haven't worked together either. So how are you working that? I mean, I'm not saying like you have to have bonding activities, but is it the school visits part of that to kind of get the community to know all of them and all of them to work with each other? That was my question. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Downing. Nice to meet you face to face too. I know we've chatted a few times. I think that's a great question. I just would like to first recognize that there is a lot of new, right? There is a lot of change, and I think that presents both an opportunity and a challenge. And I think as a team, we talk through that on a daily basis. There is an opportunity for us to, as people coming into the organization new, to look at things and ask questions about, well, why are things done this way, or how does this work? And I think that's exciting and gives us the opportunity to maybe do things a little bit differently on the things that may not be working. It is also a challenge, right? It is a challenge losing, people who know the organization well, who have been strong in the organization for a while, and to lose not only their leadership, but to lose their institutional knowledge is a challenge. So I think it is both a leadership opportunity and a leadership challenge. I think it depends in terms of like how do we sort of approach all of this new. I think there's a few layers to it. I think first I'll talk at the principal level. I feel very fortunate that the 3 new principals are walking into a system with other really strong principals. And I can say that pretty confidently without even yet being in their schools. I can see the dedication that they have, the care that they have, the way that they talk about their students in their schools. These new principals are surrounded by hardworking, passionate, talented principals. And I think if you ask the new principals what's helped them to be successful right away, I don't think any of them would talk about me or Dr. Hardy necessarily. I think they would talk about their colleagues. So I'd just like to say first, having that network for the new principals of each other, I think is critical. Now, as a new team, I think sort of what we've done is we are meeting on a daily basis. We are meeting on a daily basis, and our agendas look like some days where it is just, let's talk through as many items as we can quickly so we can norm and calibrate on them. And then other times it's let's spend some time as a team thinking strategically around 1 or 2 bigger items. So I think trying to get our team together as much as possible is step 1. I think step 2 has been individual meetings, so it's spending time for each of us to meet with different people. I know Dr. Hardy has spent a lot of time working with Dr. Stice, one-on-one, building relationships, learning about what each of their roles entails and how they can collaborate. Another example, I know Dr. Hardy's worked close with our new METCO director, Mr. Curtis Martin, to figure out what is their collaboration going to look like. So I think it's a combination of small team meetings, but then also individual meetings that starts to build that team culture. And I think the last piece of it that's most important to me is anytime you're on a team, the most important thing you can do as a team is to give open and honest feedback to one another. So I think some of the practices that we're trying to build on as a team is to say, what's working for us, what worked for us this week that we should continue? What should we do differently? What are ways that we can be more effective working together? I think that's important for any team, and I think that's especially important for a new team that hasn't had the chance to work together yet. So the summary of that is just a lot of opportunity, a strong network of people who know the organization to support us. So principals who know it well at the central office level. Ms. Dowd has been instrumental in getting us up to speed on things. The rest of the people in central office are amazing administrative assistants. I mean, you look across the organization, there's a lot of people who have helped us, and also just taking time to work together and be a team is kind of what's been our approach.
Okay, now it seems like you're step off the hot seat. All right, so we will return to the regularly scheduled agenda. And the first thing on that would be public comment. Public comment is for items that are not on the agenda. It does follow policy DEBH, which means if you do want to make a comment, please state your name and address, or even just street. Tell us what your comment is or question is. We may or may not answer it, which is one of the fun challenges that we have to work our way through. If it's factual, we can answer it. If it's opinion or deliberation, we won't, and we'll consider it at a potentially later time. So with that said, is there anybody here for public comment? Okay, so we'll move on then to the consent agenda. And do I have a motion?
I move to approve the consent agenda as listed.
Is there a second?
Second.
seconded by Chuck. Are there any questions or edits or anything else anyone wants to make? Sarah, anything on your side?
No, thank you.
Okay, then we will move to the vote, and it will be roll call. Since Sarah's off mute, we'll start with her. Sarah?
Aye.
Aaron?
Aye.
John? Aye. Chuck?
Aye.
Carla?
Aye.
And Tom, aye. 6-0 vote. All right, and now we will move on to reports. So Tom, if you want to start with anybody on your staff?
Yep, great. I would just like to extend a warm welcome to Dr. Sarah Hardy for our first school committee meeting here. Hopefully, you've all had the chance to follow along with the interview process, and I think, like myself, I was just blown away by not only her skill as a leader and her deep knowledge of teaching and learning, but also just the way that she works with people, in the way that on a daily basis she walks the walk and she does the hard work. So I think I am very, very, very excited to have her joining our team, and I'd like just to give her the chance to say hello, introduce herself, and also share anything she has an update for a report.
Thank you. Hello, everyone, and hello, everyone at home. Thank you for this opportunity. So I've been with the Reading Public Schools since July 1st, and it has been already an amazing few weeks. I really want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for the warm welcome. I had a chance to meet with many staff, leaders, parents, some community members, and with each person that I've spoken to, I've been impressed with the care and concern they have for the students of the Reading Public Schools, and really the optimism that they brought. Even when they had challenges or opportunities they wanted to discuss, it was rooted in a belief that the Reading Public Schools is a great place to be. And I know for me, just in my short time here, I felt that as well. Another thing that's been really exciting, on my third day, I got to go over to Birch Meadow and see some of our summer programming that was happening. And to me, the best way to learn about a school district is to see your students, to see them learning, to see our teachers teaching. And so that was just a wonderful introduction to the Reading Public Schools, and so impressive. I was arriving there at the summer school program just hours after it had started, and our kids were engaged. Our teachers were already working with them in ways that the kids were excited to be there, and it was very impressive to see. So very excited to be here in the Reading Public Schools. Looking forward to getting to have lots more conversations with our families, staff, community members. So if anybody has interest over the summer months in getting together, having a conversation, please don't hesitate to reach out. I really look forward to getting to know everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anything else from the administrative team?
Dr. Stice is not with us tonight, but just she wanted to thank everyone who's been involved with summer programming. I know we quickly spoke about that at our last meeting, but she is, again, very, very happy about just how things have progressed thus far. I'm following up on what Dr. Hardy shared, but just she wanted to thank the staff and the families and everyone who's been a part of it to lead with such a good start thus far, and she's hoping for a solid next few weeks as the program closes out. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. All right, we'll move to liaison reports now. Since I'm looking that direction, I'll start that direction. Carla, is there anything?
Nothing, thank you.
Chuck, is there anything?
Yes, the Recreation Committee had a meeting, I guess a week ago, and we reorged that committee, and also there was a discussion on there's a flagpole at Hunt Park, and a neighbor had expressed an interest that a flag go on it. I guess there has been for a while, so they came to us to talk about that, so they're going to come back to us now with a plan for it. And we did have a broader discussion from that about the other ballparks in town that none of them even have flagpoles, so that would probably have to go to the Board of Selectmen, but that was something we talked about. And other than that, it was good to be back. I love that group, back with them, and that was it. I think it was just routine matters other than that.
Okay, thank you. John? No reports. Aaron?
No report tonight.
Okay.
Sarah?
Sarah, yes, thank you. Sarah, any
No
report?
reports tonight, thanks, so.
No report. Thank you. trying to make sure I keep that. Keep me honest. I'll just add a quick little thing. Not a liaison report so much as just an echo of what Sarah said and what Tom said. I had the opportunity to meet with Dr. Stice this morning at Birch, and part of that wasn't even intentional, but she decided to take me through and show me what was going on. And it was great to see the smiles. And I think that's my biggest takeaway. The kids were learning, that's for sure, an extended summer. But it was great to see the smiles, the engagement, smiles from the teachers and smiles from the parents, all the programs that are there. She told me that 54% of our students in IEPs are there this summer. And we talked briefly about potentially getting it to be a higher number so that we don't run into any summer drain over time as well. So that was phenomenal to see. I've also had the chance to meet with Mr. Tracy from the high school here. That was a really great meeting as well, understanding how he's norming to his school, and then met with Ms. Shelbourne from Josh Wheaton as well. And I think the word I used with her was iron sharpened iron. We had a lot of fun talking about certain topics. So it's great to see that. It's great to see the energy and the optimism that's there. And I see the norming already just in the conversations. So somewhat to answer Ms. Downing's question as well. I see that just in the way people are relating to each other and the conversations are happening. So I just want to thank you for those opportunities and thank the staff that also participated in that. So, okay. All right, so we move on to the personnel action section, and the first topic in that is the Director of Finance search, and Tom will turn this over to you as well.
Great, thank you. I'll stand up and walk through just the process and the timeline in a minute, but while I'm seated here and before I get up and move around, I just wanted to take this chance just to publicly thank Ms. Gail Dowd for her tremendous service to the Reading Public Schools over the past 5 years. So there's a little bit of background. As you may know, Ms. Dowd initially resigned last spring, and then after the search didn't yield the candidates that we had hoped for, and also with a looming pandemic, Ms. Dowd agreed to stay on in the district, and her leadership was instrumental in navigating just all of the challenges operationally, especially presented by the pandemic. If you follow sort of the schools at all, you'll know that Ms. Dowd's known for her tireless work ethic, her strong relationships with all the departments across the town, and just her really strong knowledge and background about district financial management. So I would just like to, on behalf of the entire district, thank Ms. Dowd for her tremendous service to our community, and thank her for leaving us in such a good position as she transitions into the next phase of her career personally and professionally. So please join me in thanking Ms. Gail Dowd. I'm going to walk up, so I guess after she reluctantly to talk about this.
You can do it from here if you want to. You don't have to go up there unless you want to.
I just want people to be able to see it if that's possible.
Yeah, we can arrange for that.
Scott, you're the best.
You didn't tell me I was going to be coming back and forth.
And it's the PDF. You can start with the other one. Thank you, Scott. So while Scott gets that set up, we'll start with the obvious goal. The obvious goal is to land someone really strong in the role as soon as we can. So I think what we've done is here we've outlined a draft proposal of a timeline and a screening committee to help get us there. What I'm looking for tonight is not only school committee feedback and discussion on both the process and timeline, but ultimately school committee approval on moving forward with this process and this timeline. So I'll start with just the screening committee. So our goal is to have a group that we feel reflects all of the different roles that will be interacting with this role on this committee, and also a group that we think reflects the community. So you'll see what we put together as a proposal of who would serve on our screening committee. And the role of the screening committee would be to review applicants, review resumes, and then conduct screening interviews. We have myself, our new HR director, Michelle Roach, 2 school committee members, a principal representative, a teacher union representative, a finance, sorry, my eyes, I guess, are not good enough for the town accountant, thank you, director of school nutrition, a school business assistant, 2 members from FinCom, and also a parent representative. So that's, we feel, or I, in collaboration myself, working with, with Tom and just outlining this, a good starting place to think about who might this role be interacting with, and also who has some of the financial acumen to be able to help lead these conversations and help us make sure that we choose someone really strong for the role. You'll see below that I outlined just a potential timeline of where we stand. I'm going to talk through, I think, 3 things that are on the top of my mind of just decision points and things to think through that I would obviously like the committee's feedback on. First being on the title of the positions. You know that Ms. Dowd is transitioning her role as a CFO, Chief Financial Officer, and we have currently posted the role as a Director of Finance role. So I think there's a couple of considerations in that. I think first and foremost, the decision is that bringing in someone new in the middle of a new team, it provides, by having sort of the operational work sit with me, or a majority of it, for me to develop a good understanding of the whole organization. So that way I can effectively support the organization as I learn it and work with some of the operational work. Also, secondly, we feel that that's sort of a title that Ms. Dowd has earned as a result of her work in the district. I know that she did not start with the CFO title, but sort of as she developed the relationships and the reputation for her work, that's sort of a title that she had earned. So we felt that posting as a Director of Finance would operationally work for us, as it would allow me to sort of oversee those departments and develop an understanding of those departments. And also, at the same time, if we feel like we have someone in the pool who is more suited for a CFO role, or who is more suited for a different title, that we could be nimble and quickly shift and change the role to have to align with their sort of skills and experiences. But would like to say, obviously, that's a high bar for sort of what we feel that title of CFO, and making sure that if we're to do that, that someone's qualifications really match on that. So tentatively, we have posted as a Director of Finance. The second consideration for us, you may know Ms. Dowd's last day is August 16th. You see the tentative date for the start of a new Director of Finance would be September 6th. Even in conversation with Ms. Dowd, we realize that's a really tight window, right? To expect someone who either is coming from as a sitting school business administrator or even the private sector, that does not give a huge turnaround time for them. So we realize even in this kind of timeline, that may be a little more ideal for us. There's still a lag between Ms. Dowd's last day and the start of someone new. I would like to say that Ms. Dowd has made it very clear in our conversations that she is wants to work with us, to collaborate with us, to do what she can to help us get through, and is not going to sort of leave us in a tough spot. With that said, we also want to be extremely respectful of her timelines and her wishes as well. So I think we've developed sort of a good collaborative conversations on how we can bridge that gap in time. So I don't think it's necessarily we need a formal plan yet, given that we're having these conversations on a daily basis. I think the third consideration, which I'd really like committee feedback on, is you'll see that right now we tentatively have, after the screening committees interviews, we have interviews with the superintendent and town manager, finalists announced, and then community meet and greets. Now, we have community meet and greets on there, I think, because we want to maximize community input in any process. I think it's critical that we hear from all constituencies as we make decisions, especially around hiring and critical roles. That's why we have that there. And allowing the community to give feedback through a community meet and greet enables us to be responsive to your feedback. There's also a drawback in having that at that time. A few, I think the most significant is it's a tall ask to have someone who may be a sitting school business administrator or someone who's in the private sector to publicly put their name out there and then not get the role. So I think, in conversations with some candidates who may be interested, they say this sort of thing could be a deal breaker for them, knowing that they're happy in their role, they'd love to stay in their role, but they would explore it if they did not know that they would have, or if they did not have to necessarily go public and then not get the role. So I think I have hesitation about having that phase there in that way, knowing that we need a strong pool. knowing that last time the pool didn't yield the candidates that we wanted, and also knowing that right now is probably not the optimal time to be hiring, I think we have to be thoughtful about how do we do everything we can to maximize the pool of candidates that we'll have, while also being mindful about what are the ways that we can make sure that this decision reflects the viewpoints and the feedback of those who will be working with this role most closely. So I think that's the dilemma and the tension that I have struggled with, and would love to turn it over just to the committee too, to hear their thoughts on other possible pathways and opportunities. So I'll stop there and just, open it up and see where we land as a group. Thank you.
All right, let's start the conversation. Who has your first question? I actually do not, because I expect to go to a minute when I think we'll go to a motion. So, Chuck.
I can start. Thank you, Tom. And you and I talked a little bit. I'm not opposed to changing the titles / job responsibilities, or paring it back to Director of Finance from CFO. My only concern with that is, does that limit the pool with somebody that we might really otherwise want and to bring in? But, maybe, with our feelers out there, we can still identify those people and change the process along the way to, bring that person in as a CFO as opposed. So I guess that's, you use the term nimble. I mean, that's what we need to be, I think. As I said, I'm not opposed to going out on this basis, but we better be ready to go to CFO if we're finding that we're not able to, attract what we really want. In terms of your second question on the community meet and greet, I think that's important when you're hiring a principal, a superintendent, assistant superintendent. I don't know that we necessarily need community feedback on, you've got a good section of the community on the screening committee. Accountants are different types, so I don't know whether a community meet and greet is going to be beneficial. But again.
We can see Gail's face.
Are you saying we're not people?
Gail, you know what I mean. So.
Okay. Is there any other? We'll go Erin first.
So I agree with what Chuck was saying about the title. I think to me it's more important to attract the largest candidate pool that we can, and then based on the person we actually hire and their skill set and what you need the job to look like for your team, then I think the title can come into conversation. As far as the community meet and greet, I think it's a really interesting point that you bring up. I think that there are other ways to get community feedback. So typically, in addition to doing meet and greets, we've always done a survey where we say, it's usually one question, like what do you want to see in the next director of finance? So that's still a way to allow community members to provide, very specific input without knowing who the person is, but gives you and the screening committee helpful information about what's important to the community. And again, I really wouldn't want to do anything that would limit our candidate pool. I think that unless you're a budget parent or someone who's in regular attendance at school committee meetings, which is typically a small number. It's nice to have so many of you here tonight. Not a lot of people do, as community members, interact with the CFO / Director of Finance in the same way that they have relationships with some other staff members. So I think we have a nice, strong screening committee outlined here. There's an opportunity for anyone to apply for that and to, present a case for why they should be a member of that. So I would feel okay if we did something like a survey to be sure that, you know, people had that opportunity to give input, but then otherwise didn't do a community meet and greet.
John?
Yeah, excuse me, thanks. I like Aaron's idea of the survey. The other thought that I had, and just thinking about the screening committee, we could add more community input by adding another parent or two, right? And you don't want the screening committee to get too unwieldy, but it's at 12, I think, now, so it's, you know, it's a reasonable size. You know, I think currently you've got one person on there who wouldn't be there by virtue of some sort of official position. So a little bit more community input could come through that angle as well. So I am comfortable, I agree with Chuck, I don't know if I would have used the words he used, but I agree with Chuck that it's not necessarily as critical for a meet and greet for this role as it is for some others. And I'm just teasing Chuck, of course.
Okay.
It's his birthday, so.
Sarah, is there any comment that you want to add?
No, I think I agree with everything that's been said so far. I think flexibility about what we're looking for in the role to allow to attract best talent. And also, in terms of the community meet and greet, I think having a way to solicit feedback, whether that's a survey or just a call for questions that the committee could bring before the candidate would be great.
Okay. So I'll synthesize that and add a few other things then. I'll be the fourth one to say a quick survey that we can add as something that we can roll out in the next week or something, in less than the next week, sometime early next week, so that we can get enough information prior to the screening committee's organizational meeting and use that information as feedback for the type of questions you want to ask in that first round. So I think if we add that in, Google form, whatever works easiest, usually publish it out on where we publish it, and then get that feedback as necessary. That gives the community a chance to say, I'm looking for this, I want this, I want this, and maybe what questions they want to make sure is asked. So that's one. I'm a little hesitant to add too many more people to the committee. I might say maybe one more, as maybe a compromise with Sean saying two more. That actually would get us to 13 if we did that. I like odd numbers. So that's, you know, just one thing there. And then I would also say that with regards to this role overall, and you and I have had this conversation, this is a very unique role in that it's a co-hire, right? Between you and between us. You know, Mass General Law did not change the hire here. This is not an agreement by us to appoint it that you suggest. It's a collective hire, essentially. So in that regard, I think it would be safe as well if we feel like there's 2 or 3 finalists that we add instead of the community thing, we can do executive session interviews. That would allow the committee to get the right information on each of the candidates and weigh in on it appropriately. Same time frame potentially. You know, if we have people availability, if I remember from the vacation schedules we gathered earlier this summer, nobody's out that week. As of right now, unless that's changed. So potentially, we could have an executive session interview that week of 2 or 3 finalists if there are such a thing. And that would be covered appropriately for the reason you're actually outlining. So I think that's one compromise there. I don't think anybody else has any feedback on that idea, because I'm just one person, but I think that helps address that issue, but it also makes sure that the whole committee has a chance to meet the people that we're potentially hiring.
So you're suggesting in lieu of the, where it says meet and greet on the 16th to the 17th, that's when the executive session?
Yep. So
And then the
essentially
survey
executive
would
session
take
finalists.
care of the general public.
Yep. Executive session of the finalists for the interview process, and then then we could announce it officially in the public session once we've made the agreement of decision if we want to put the offer out.
I think we need some guidance from Colby on this one. Reading number 8, the ordinary exceptions. It says, I won't read the whole thing, but provided, however, that this clause shall not apply to any meeting, including meetings of the preliminary screening committee, consider and interview applicants who have passed prior preliminary screening. So I don't think for sort of the final phase, at least based on my readings, I'm not sure it applies to sort of the final phase of the interview process.
That's a good caveat to catch, so thank you for that. I think we can ask Colby just to be sure.
Sure.
The preliminary screening is not an advisory committee to us, so it's not going to go into executive session. That's not the way it's being structured right now. We don't have it voted to do that as well, so that we might have a bit of a caveat there that we can potentially try, but we will obviously need to make sure we're clear on this. So that's a potential challenge that we can go through. So other than that, is there any other feedback? Sarah? No? So then let's see.
No, that's good.
I just want to, I just have a, clarify something you just said. So when our screening committee interviews, it's not going to be in the executive session, you said? Because they're going to be, that's when it should be an executive session, because, you know, they don't want to be out there yet if they're gainfully employed somewhere else.
So this is the confidentiality. We would do generally what we do for other hires, and the people that are on this committee would sign a confidentiality thing. But there's technically, because we're not setting up, and we don't usually set up, in this case, advisory committees. The only case where we've set up an advisory committee in this case was for the superintendent search.
Right.
Right? So in these type of searches, it's been a confidentiality clause that the members of the committee have signed. Whether that's binding or not is a whole other question, right?
But it also does not having an executive session, what if someone just barged in the room? I mean, they could, right, if it was an open meeting?
It's not, so that's the other thing. This is not an open meeting. It would not be posted,
Okay.
right? So nobody, I mean, we know the approximate timeline of it, but it's not a meeting that would be posted as a meeting of the school committee or an advisory committee. This is not creating an open meeting related committee at all. It's essentially it's a group that the superintendent's pulling together to interview these candidates. Which, to Sean's point, it would have been preliminary screening before, and so therefore potentially could not be finalist executive committee. So that leaves us to potential solution, but also potential non-solution that we have to figure out how to answer. So with that said, do we have? Anybody want to make a? Yeah, Sean, do you want to make the motion with the amendments you think we agree to, and then we can agree whether that's the right motion?
Can I ask that we have at least a little bit of input from others on if Colby gives us the thumbs up, are we comfortable with doing something in executive session to review finalists? If Colby gives a thumbs up.
If Colby gives a thumbs up, I am comfortable adding that step. If Colby gives a thumbs down, I am comfortable not having any form of a meet and greet. As long as we're doing a survey or something to get public input.
Okay. Carla?
I think that I am comfortable without a meet and greet for the general public, just to retain good quality candidates. I don't even feel it necessary that we have our own kind of round of interviews. I think the screening committee and the screening process works. And I'm fine with just having them run through the screening process without having a second round of interviews with the school committee.
Okay. Do you have any other thoughts? Chuck? No. Sarah, do you have any other thoughts?
No further thoughts. Thanks, Tom.
So it sounds like we don't have a set of agreement, so let's put the motion out there with the Colby addition, and then we'll see what happens.
Okay, let me give it a shot. Move to approve the Director of Finance search process as outlined in the Superintendent's memo dated July 19, 2021, with the following amendments. The elimination of the community meet and greet, the inclusion of a community survey, and pending advice from the school committee's legal counsel, vetting of finalists conducted by the school committee in executive session in partnership with the superintendent. And one additional point. Oh, I think I said that already. Did I not say it? Oh, yeah, sorry. And one additional parent added to this meeting.
Second.
Seconded by Chuck. All right, any further discussion on the motion? All right, roll call. Sarah?
Aye.
Aaron?
Aye.
Sean?
Aye.
Chuck?
Aye.
Carla?
Aye.
Tom? Aye. So that moves 6-0. Okay. Tom, did you get all those changes?
I did, thank you.
Are you comfortable with them?
Sounds great, absolutely.
I guess at this point.
No, but that's,
Because we really do value your
no, I think this does get at sort of that tension that we were talking about of just how do you get input from the community and also how do you make sure we maximize our pool? And I think these updates make it stronger in achieving both of those, so thank you.
Okay. All right, so we'll move on past that as well. The next item on the agenda is the appointment of the superintendent to collaborative boards. And I first want to apologize that I have a typo in the memo that I sent to the committee. North Shore and Northeast, and thank you to Samantha for catching that on me earlier today. So this is an item of Mass General Law where we are supposed to, as a school committee, appoint a member to each consortium that we're a member of, collaborative that we're a member of. We have the opportunity to appoint a school committee member if we choose to, or the superintendent of schools, or if we were, a charter school, then the charter board member. We are not a charter school, so that means it could be one of the 6 of us, or it could be Tom. Considering the operational nature of these boards, my suggestion is that we move to appoint Tom to them, and it would be the SEAM Collaborative and the North Shore Educational Consortium. As I was doing research on this, SEAM has already appointed you on the board, but I don't have that right technically, so let's just get to that point and make it happen, and then we'll have to make sure North Shore knows once we've approved this as well. So Tom, do you want to add anything to this at all?
No, I've been in communication with both organizations and thrilled to partner with them. And I know both organizations have been both great partners of Reading Public Schools for a long time, and I'm really excited to collaborate in this capacity as well. So thank you.
Okay, so great. So with that introduction, we have a few motions, so we'll start with first.
As required by Mass General Law, Chapter 40, Section 4E, Subsection C, I move to appoint Superintendent Thomas Milashevsky as the Reading Public Schools representative to the Board of Directors of the North Shore Education Consortium for the 2021-2022 school year.
Second.
Seconded by Carla. Any further discussion? Okay. Carla?
Aye.
Chuck?
Aye.
Sean?
Aye.
Aaron?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
And Tom? Aye. So moved 6-0. Next motion?
As required by Mass General Law, Chapter 40, Section 4E, Subsection C, I move to appoint Superintendent Thomas Milashevsky as the Reading Public Schools representative to the Board of Directors of the SEAM Collaborative for the 2021-2022 school year.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Chuck. Any further discussion? Okay. Sarah?
Aye.
Aaron?
Aye.
Sean?
Aye.
Chuck?
Aye.
Carla?
Aye.
Tom? Aye. 6-0. Okay, and we'll move on to the next section of the agenda. And this one, I want to thank Aaron for. We had this, as of last meeting, a week and a half ago, we had this a little bit further out in the agenda item set as of late September. Aaron briefly asked me if that was the right time for it, or whether we should, have it a little sooner, essentially. Talking with Tom and Sean, we agreed that this should be moved up a little bit so that we can set the right framework for some of the goal discussions we're going to be having over the next couple of months. And make sure that we knew, as a result of that, what should be targeted for what points in time. So there's something that we can have tangible, physical, maybe not physical, but tangible completion of, for the goals in alignment with the timelines are put forward. In the packet, the committee members will see the MASC guidance on this, which was recently updated. And it does note that new superintendents with less than 3 years of experience should have a 1-year review cycle. So I put those as our option. I did not put a 2-year cycle as an option. And in consultation with Tom and Sean, we came up with 3 options as it stands in the memo. And of course, as a committee, if we come up with other options, we're certainly able to do so, and we'll vote on one of those and proceed. So the first option on the table right now is that we have a one-year, school year-based evaluation cycle from July 2021 to June 2022. And we must do two types of assessment. The first one is a formative and the second is a summative, with the formative assessment in December 2021 and the summative assessment evaluation in June of 2022. The second option that we put on the table is also a school year-based review cycle. This one with the formative evaluation in February of 2022, giving 2 additional months of time, and then the summative evaluation in June of 2022. And the last one on the table is a one-year election year-based cycle, which is going to be slightly less than a year, more like 9 months, from July 2021 to March 2022, with the formative evaluation in December 2021 and the summative evaluation in March 2022, prior to the upcoming election. So those are the options on the table. In just really pros and cons, I guess. The first one is that it kind of cuts the year right in half, December and June. And so but it does go for the full school year, so we're able to observe an entire year of time for Tom and team. The second one doesn't quite cut the year in half, but maybe cuts the time in half from goal approval until the end of the year. So if we are looking at our calendar right now, we probably will be approving goals in the late September, early October timeframe. Gives 3 or 4 months of activity, then 3 or 4 months of other activity after that. So between the formative and summative. And the last one tries to break in the middle between the two, the period of March and December, essentially giving it 3 months or so in each period of time for the assessment period. So that's the brief introduction, and I will open the floor for discussion before we start a motion, because I'd like to coalesce to the motion if possible. So does anybody? Chuck?
Yes, so it seems like every time we do an evaluation, or historically when we've done it, we've had that problem where, you know, we had committee members who couldn't really do an evaluation because they hadn't been on. So I guess, you know, that's why we started to go to the election cycle, or we tried to, and, you know, I think that's, you know, then the superintendents get an evaluation from, you know, 6 members that have worked with him for that time frame, and not, you know, 4 or 3 or 2, and then you know, a couple of lighter ones. So I like the election year calendar. I know it's shorter because, I mean, it's going to come on us quicker than the other ones, but I like it for the purpose of he's getting feedback from 6 people based on their experience and not, you know, some different number.
Okay.
So,
any other feedback? Erin?
I strongly dislike the election year cycle. Granted, I don't have a long track record of doing this, so I fully confess that. But it was frustrating to try and do an evaluation and not have a full year to base the evaluation on. Like, it felt really hard to say, oh, this goal was met, or even sometimes that like progress was made, just because of when we were doing the actual evaluation. And I would much prefer to be able to, particularly year, to have a whole year to look at, to be able to like really evaluate and reflect upon that year. It does come with its downsides, which is that we have an election in our town that's not based on a school year. So invariably, there could be, in a normal election cycle, there could be 2 new people who are then doing the evaluation. And in our history, we've given those people a choice to do the full evaluation or to just write comments, depending on whether they felt, you know, they could securely do the evaluation confidently. But But I like that we're gonna have the formative evaluation step as a formal step. So I feel like no matter whether we do that in December or February, that will be before the election cycle. So even if the summative doesn't have the exact 6 people sitting at the table right now, I still feel like the school evaluation needs to be based on the school year. Maybe we need to look at moving the town election. Just open a can of worms. And I actually like the idea of February better. I think that December really means we're potentially doing stuff in November to have it ready for a December meeting. And if we have just approved goals in early October, I don't know, it doesn't feel like a particularly lot of time to be able to give you substantial feedback. And also in time with your entry plan, I think you have a piece that runs until January. So I sort of like the idea of, you know, that sort of a piece of your own entry plan having been completed. So I would vote for option 2 for those reasons.
Is there any other committee feedback? Sarah, do you have any feedback?
No further feedback, thank you.
Okay, then I will add a little bit as well. I'm also in favor of the 1-year cycle as opposed to the 1-year school year cycle. I'm also in favor of the February option. And I looked at this quite a bit when we were looking at it, and one of the Q&A questions in the packet that we have addresses a little bit of your concern, Chuck. In particular, it says, members stepping off the committee can prepare an individual evaluation that covers the period up until the point they leave the committee, and this can become part of the composite. So you get a portion of the completion. That's an option.
If they do it.
That's if they do it, right? Which is you and me this year, right? So I would do it if for some reason I'm not going to be elected again, but I think that's the option there. I think there's more value in getting a full year under Tom's belt from a review perspective. I have a hard time thinking what we can tangibly say will be done by April or by March of next year as well, even as we start thinking about the goals and whatnot, and we try to say that this is going to happen by March. Maybe step 2 of your plan, step 3 of your plan, but even that is really more listening than too much else. So I'd like to see if we can coalesce to the 1-year cycle with the February formative and the June summative. And that would give us, give Tom more time, give the rest of his team more time to get acclimated, build up goals that are tangible, that are meaty enough from a delivery perspective, that we can then, you know, have enough of a conversation to show what was achieved over that 1-year cycle.
I guess that's,
Absolutely, yeah.
so, I mean, in theory, then, based on the comments I've heard, we're designing this for Tom at this point. But he's going to be, at some point, he's going to be here for, 100 years. Right?
I was like.
And then, maybe at that point, we could go to the election cycle because we know, but I hear what you're saying. You want to kind of see that whole year's worth of work, and that makes sense. So I guess we're designing, this is something that we can reevaluate, is what I'm asking.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's ultimately, I don't know if it was Tom I was talking to, or I forget who I was talking to, but I think this should be something that is part of the goal process every year, right? The committee should say, what are we looking at for this time? Is it going to be election year? Is it going to be school year? Just make that conscious choice. It should be part of our process, essentially. Not default either way. Mm-hmm. And every committee is different too. So the reality is the committees are going to have to choose that. Mm-hmm. There's nothing in Tom's contract that mandates a date of review necessarily. I think we're very careful about that this time around, so that we could give that flexibility to ourselves. He will have a review. It has to happen. But the committee then, as part of each reset cycle, for lack of a better way to say, can say, where do we think it fits this year? And I think that's probably a best practice, it even aligns with this document as a best practice that says the committee should make that conscious decision.
Yeah, I mean, I guess so, I just responded. So I guess framed that way, I would be comfortable with the annual, knowing that we're gonna kind of have this discussion more frequently and not just lock into the same schedule forever.
Okay, great. Carla?
That was my thought as well, similar to Chuck's, that I was going for the election-based cycle, but as Aaron said, I wanted that full year, because I don't think it's fair to give him a portion of a year. I think he's got a really comprehensive plan, and, but you got to give him time too, right? So as long as we will review this next year to possibly tag it and attach it to an election cycle, I think that's a good way to go. So I would be happy with the option 2, knowing that next year we can tag it to, potentially tag it to a campaign cycle. Because it is about the schools, right? Not about the campaign, but you want to give people the opportunity to participate effectively.
Okay. Sean, is that your hand up?
Yeah, in a vacuum, I would prefer the election-based approach, I think, but again, we're not in a vacuum. So in Tom's first year, we made the comments about a longer observation period being relatively useful. So with the caveat that we're going to revisit this next year, I think I'm comfortable with that. I would just flag for us now, you may want to think about, are there other elements of the process that we want to talk about sooner in the year so that a election year tag cycle in future years is more comfortable, so to speak, right? So one of the challenges in election, tying to election years, even with a tenured superintendent, is we're doing goals in the fall and we're evaluating them 6 months later, right? That by definition isn't a year, even if it's some trail over from old goals. So we might need to think about how we can figure out if there's an opportunity to accelerate the goals by a month or two, maybe, or approval of the goals by a month or two to accommodate an earlier timeline if that's the route we choose to go next year. But for now, I can be comfortable with the second option.
Okay. I think that's an interesting point for sure, because you're always going to be chasing the ball and you keep that goal cycle out. One of the things we should keep in mind, and it doesn't affect us today, right now, but oftentimes those goals are going to be evaluated around data that comes out, and that data doesn't come out until August at the earliest point for the administration to read through it, not to mention the principals and the rest of the community as well. So we have to be conscious of timelines of things we have no control over as well as we go through that. Okay, so I think we have a motion, Sean, that I think we coalesced on. So would you mind reading? February.
Move after a one-year evaluation cycle from July 21st to June 22nd, from July 2021 to June 2022 for Superintendent Thomas Milashevsky, with formative evaluation to occur in February 2022 and the summative evaluation to occur in June 2022.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Chuck. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none. Sarah?
Aye.
Aaron?
Aye.
Sean?
Aye.
Chuck?
Aye.
Carla?
Aye.
Tom? Aye. So moved, 6-0. Okay, moving on from the personnel action section to the new business section. The first topic in the new business section is the declaration of surplus equipment. Ms. Dowd, I believe you have something for us here.
I do. Included in your packet is a memo. Historically, we have come to the committee, I want to say twice during the year, usually late in the fall and again in the spring. But as we talked about at the end of last year, throughout the spring, we made a lot of purchases, some of it replacing aged equipment and some of it on the curriculum front. And as the committee and the community knows, space is at a premium. So the thought process behind this was to come to the committee probably more frequently over the next couple of months as we're going through, and especially now as we're bringing a lot more furniture back into the classrooms. We've replaced furniture. We want to make sure we're declaring surplus and getting the old stuff out of the building so that we can accept the new stuff and get it set up and not run into issues where we have furniture in hallways causing issues. So this is what I would envision one of the first memos. There will probably be another one in the August-September timeframe as more of the material is coming in. So a lot of it, as I've tried to enhance these memos, is to really talk about what it is we're declaring and why. For the Coolidge Middle School, this is actually their old equipment that they had that I believe was donated before the dawn of time. So they have had that in there for a long period of time. It's falling apart, pieces are corroding, so we really want to be able to remove it. We were fortunate to be able to replace all of the equipment this year. The other big piece, which is exciting for the high school, is that we did purchase a new world language curriculum. So this is really to remove all of the old material in here. And we have gone through it. Anywhere where we feel we would be able to donate it or do something with it, we obviously take that step. But as we tried to put in here, you can see some of the dates in some of these books is that they really are outdated. So we were hoping that the committee would agree that we can declare this as surplus so we could really start the year in a good place with all of the new materials we've purchased.
Okay, great, thank you very much. Let's take the motion first, and then we'll have any discussion.
Move to declare the surplus equipment as stated in the memo from the Chief Financial Officer dated July 14th, 2021.
Second.
Seconded by Carla. Any questions or comments from the committee? None. Any questions or comments by Sarah? I've been missing. Sarah, did you have anything on your side?
No, thank you.
Okay. I'll just note that seeing that we have books from 1975 that we're getting rid of, that was what I was.
I might have put that in there for you, Tom.
You know, so.
Point of privilege, Mr. Chair, residents, parents from home are texting that they can only hear your voice if you're not picking up any of your others. And I texted them, well, I can hear you all fine, it seems like your mics are all working, so
Okay.
maybe it's an RCTV problem, but I don't know.
Everybody else have their mics with you? Everybody check that your mic is on, you have the green light on the top? Yep.
RCTVs, I think, means extra ones, not the ones
They're using these little ones?
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, is everybody's little mic on? Okay. Just do a quick sound check, Aaron, will you mind? I mean, we can't tell for sure if they're gonna hear, but if you can see it, can you see any sort of sign back there that it's?
Honestly, I don't know how they pull their audio feeds. So
Okay. Okay.
They'll text Cameron back, I'm sure.
Just gotta text that they can hear it.
They can hear at home? Okay, well, thank you for that, Karen, and hopefully everybody will make sure we kind of straddle the microphones as we go. All right, so I was back to the 1975. Did you just say
straddle microphone?
Like, I'm going like this, I gotta refresh it.
I got a weird visual image there.
Get myself out of that hole right now. In 1987, so now we're gonna have things published in the 2020s.
I would say 2020s, all the world language stuff that we just acquired. It's,
All
I
right,
know,
so-
working with the department head, she's very excited and really wants to be able to have a place to put all of her new curriculum.
Okay. Latin hasn't changed in 40-something dead language, so it doesn't really matter. Okay. All right, any other questions or comments? All right, so roll call on the vote, on the motion that's on the table. Carla?
Aye.
Chuck?
Aye.
John? Aye. Aaron?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
And Tom? Aye. Okay, so we are now moving on to agenda item E2, which is the response to complaint brought against a public individual. And before I do that, I have a small announcement to make. At the recommendation of our attorney, I will read the school committee's statement on this matter. At that point, there will be no further school committee discussion. If the public wishes to comment, the comments will be respected in alignment with school committee policy BEDH, in particular name and address, and being respectful. But we will not be able to answer with anything other than factual information by Dr. Milszewski or myself. So that's a brief intro. And we will be releasing this as part of the packet, an updated packet, as we go forward. So as some of you may be aware, this past March, some confidential student record information was inadvertently released by the town of Reading in response to a public records request regarding the incident at the U.S. Capitol on January 6th. The school committee recently heard a complaint from parents who were impacted by this release regarding their concerns about committee member Sean Brandt and his knowledge of the situation. These are the facts as we know them regarding this incident. On February 16th, a resident of Reading, the requester, requested all written communications from January 7th, 2021 to January 28th, 2021 between members of the Reading community, the Reading School Committee, and Reading Public Schools staff and administration that pertains to an email to parents with an attachment about the events at our nation's capital on January 6, 2021. The information was initially gathered by former Superintendent Doherty, but due to perceived time constraints and with the promise of data redaction, the information was provided to Laura Gem, the town clerk of the town of Reading. Ms. Gem volunteered to review the materials and redact any identifying information that was protected from disclosure by law, including student record information. On or around March 29th, the materials were sent to the requester by Ms. Gem. It was reported that another party sent the materials on to an individual who then posted them on a web page. According to Mr. Brandt, the requester had asked Mr. Brandt if he wanted a copy of the materials they received as part of the public records request, and Mr. Brandt stated that he did want to receive a copy of the materials. Mr. Brandt also stated he was not involved in the creation of the original request materials, nor was he aware that the request had been distributed to others at that time. Sometime shortly after March 29, 2021, Mr. Brandt says he received a copy via Google Drive and began to review it. Mr. Brandt asserted that the material review occurred over a period of a few weeks due to other conflicting obligations. Over the course of his review, he discovered there was a confidential student information that was not redacted. Mr. Brandt acknowledged that he did not immediately notify Superintendent Doherty upon discovering unredacted information contained in the materials. On April 15, 2021, I, Tom Wise, informed Superintendent Doherty that I had just become aware of the fact that there were some emails that were not properly redacted on a website. Superintendent Doherty attempted to correct the matter and spoke to families who contacted him regarding the matter. The committee reviewed this matter at length and engaged our counsel, Colby Brunt, for further assistance. Attorney Brunt has informed us that the actions of Mr. Brandt do not amount to a FERPA violation. Based on the information before us, we have determined that Mr. Brandt had no control over the release of confidential student information to the third party, nor did Mr. Brandt, as recipient of the information from the requester, release the information to any other party. As such, counsel for the committee has advised the committee that Mr. Brandt did not violate FERPA. However, the committee does note that Mr. Brandt, in his capacity as a school committee member, should have informed Superintendent Doherty immediately upon learning that there was an accidental release of confidential student record information. Further, the committee did discuss the authority the body had with respect to this complaint. Pursuant to the Reading Home Rule Charter, we do not have the authority to remove a member. The authority rests solely with the voters of Reading. Therefore, there was no further discussion on that topic. Additionally, the committee did discuss the ethics complaints brought against Mr. Brandt. Individual committee members expressed serious concerns with the appearance of the actions and lack of notification of the breach to the superintendent and the chair of the committee. But the committee of the whole did not conclude with respect to any ethical or policy violations. District administration and the committee of the whole are saddened and apologetic that information about students was inappropriately released without necessary redactions. To that end, we are taking the following action. All public records requests that involve the schools will be handled by the district's record access officer. The RAO will consult with counsel when necessary on questions involving redaction. As of late April, the superintendent of schools is the district's record access officer. That change has taken place. Council has drafted a letter to the webmaster asking to remove all information from the public records request and offering to provide a new version that has been reviewed by the RAO for the district. The committee has engaged council to provide a training in late August regarding the laws involving public records and student records. District administration is working to notify all families that mistakenly had their student records compromised in this event. After thorough review of the materials provided in the public records request, 274 emails were reviewed, covering 281 URLs. Of those, eight emails mistakenly contained information that is considered confidential student information regarding 6 students at Birch Meadow Elementary. Outside of these 6 students, no other confidential student information was released. The committee will refer this to a policy subcommittee and will review our existing student records policy, JRA, and procedure, JRA-R, in alignment with our public right to know policy, KDB, for potential changes and updates regarding public records requests and data breaches. It is our expectation that we never need to address a similar situation in the future, and we commit to working together to realize that expectation. Once again, our sincere apologies to the families and students who were impacted. That is our statement. Dr. Milchevsky, Tom, I think you have a small update with regards to parent notification.
So we were able to, as an administrative team, look through all of on the website and try to make sure we identified all the potential families and students that were affected. And as Tom shared, that was a total of 6 students. So we then today made calls to all of those families. We were able to reach 4 of the families, either face-to-face or over the phone, and left 2 voicemails as well. We'll be following up tomorrow with a written statement that just shares sort of a more background of the situation and gives a copy of the exact piece of the student record that was shared as part of this breach. So that's sort of our update. So by tomorrow, everyone should, who has been involved, received a written notification and also a call. I would also just like to, on behalf of the school district, apologize for all of the families affected, directly and indirectly. And then I know it's my sincere hope to work with those families to do whatever we can to try to make things as right as we can, and also in the future to make sure that things like this, do not happen again. I know that the damage has been done, but again, we are deeply sorry. I know as an administrative team, and again, look forward to working with the families to try to do whatever we can to make things as right as we can. So thank you for your understanding and support in that process.
Okay. Is there any public comment? All right. Mr. Haley?
Thank you. Christopher Haley, 71 Tennyson Road. I just want to quickly say that in my short 42 years on life, I've had 3 yard signs that could be considered political in nature. One of them was myself. The other 2 was Sean Brantz and Erin Gaffins. Out of the 273 emails that were released, does the committee have any idea on how many pages that ends up equating to? Does anybody have a guess? How many pages? 273?
Having helped Tom go through this, I don't know how many pages, but it's a lot.
It is 1,496 pages. That is a daunting task for Sean Brandt to take on by himself, let alone the 5 people minimum that would have actually had to go through all of this. Massive task. I mean, it would take weeks, if not months, for it to all go through. So it's perfectly understandable that Sean had 2 weeks to look over, not look over stuff. Completely reasonable. Except the one problem is, my daughter's first email in the entire packet, the first email, 1,496 pages, she's the first one with personally identifiable information regarding her medical record. First one. You still have the opportunity, Mr. Grant, to do the right thing. In this entire equation since March, you have not done the right thing. So, it is in our students' best interest that you are not the victim. We are, our families are, and you should do the right thing and step down because you know what you did and did not do. And I'll have no further comment.
I wasn't going to speak tonight because it's been a lot on my family. It's been a lot on my emotional state. My son has been part of this. His email was probably the worst one. Reading has learned a lot of lessons because of my Jake. He's been through a lot in this school district. The school district has failed him, and now the school committee has failed him. You need to do the right thing here. I have a question for the chair. You have policies. You are here to write policy. What the hell, excuse my language, is the point of the policy if it's not enforceable? We have absolute proof that he violated your entire ethics policy. We have absolute proof that he violated policy BCA, JRA, and you are just gonna let it happen. What is the point of the policy? Somebody tell me, why do you have a policy if it's A, not enforceable, and B, when it is broken, nothing can happen and only the voters, and as you can see, nobody seems to care that children are at stake here. Mr. Brandt is the victim. My child's not the victim. Mr. Brandt is the victim in this town. He's the one that's being, taken through the mud. I've had enough. I would like this school district to stop abusing my child. Thank you.
Ms. Williams, I appreciate I think you know more than I know, more than many, that I appreciate what your concern is and what you've gone through. To answer your question, we simply do not have the power, even if we agree with your assertion, to do anything about it, according to Mass General Law and according to the Reading Home Rule Charter. That's a fact. It's not maybe the fact you want to hear, that's the fact. So, is there any further? Ms. Haley?
Amanda Potter, Shayla, 71 Tennyson. I'd like to echo both of their comments that I am so sick and tired of seeing these comments that Mr. Brandt is the victim. He's claiming he's the victim. He's claiming it. Everybody is claiming on social media he's the victim. You're not the victim, Sean. Our children are. And I'm so disheartened. I held a sign in my yard for you. I campaigned for you. I reached out. I talked to everybody your first time around. And this is what we get in return? This is what my child gets in return, my stepdaughter. I'm going to now read an excerpt from Sean Brandt's statement to the families that were affected. 4 of the families that were affected. Even after the emails went public, I continued down the path ensuring that I took the appropriate steps. I consulted with our attorney to make sure that I knew what those steps were. Now I'll read the statement of Sean Brandt's public statement. Number 7. Even after the parent I knew to be involved had spoken to the superintendent, I contacted counsel and took additional steps. So I'm asking you, the school committee, what date did Sean Brandt first notify legal counsel regarding having the emails in question? What date was that?
Sean sent an email to legal counsel on May 4th and discussed with legal counsel on May 7th.
You're guilty. You lied. You've lied to the public. And you have people sticking up for you. It's a disgrace. It's an absolute disgrace to this town. It's an absolute disgrace to our children. And it's an absolute disgrace to my child, to Alicia's children. I have... And one more comment about a staff member of something that she posted in relation to all of this. There is a staff member, a teacher in this school, posting on social media, calling the victims' families racist and white supremacists, and that is our motive for bringing this to public. That teacher needs to be looked into, and that teacher needs to have repercussions for that. How dare her make this a racist thing? How dare her call us white supremacists and racists? And if you need the information on that and who that is, I'm happy to speak with you offline. Thank you.
Yes, miss. As a reminder, please make sure you state your name and street at the very minimum.
Hi, my name is Lisa Cates. I live on Lowell Street at 191. Some of you may already recognize my name because I post lengthy and mildly inflammatory Facebook comments, so I apologize. Like many others here, I'm here because of the concern over the emails that were released by the school district and then later publicly posted on a website owned by one of our town residents. There are a number of problems with those emails, obviously. The first and most alarming is that private information, especially medical information, was released about minors in our town. I don't think that there's any debate that that was a problem, so I'm not going to dwell on it because I think we're all in agreement somebody messed up, whether intentionally or not, and we need to fix it going forward, so I'll let that go. What I would like to address, if that's all right, and I'll try to be brief, are how the school responded to the events of January 6th. For the record, I have to say this so no one assumes anything. I condemn what happened on January 6th. Anyone who broke the law that day should be punished, no questions. Violence is not the answer. Storming our Capitol is not the answer. However, I'm an independent. I vote all ways. I voted independent, Democrat, Republican in the past. I am not partisan. And I'm pro-activism because I do believe that people should have a voice. But that does not apply to our school district. There are different considerations that need to be taken when there are children involved. They are minors. Our school dollars, our tax dollars are paying for the schools. Teachers cannot be political. I understand that teachers want to discuss current events in the classroom. And I don't really care if current events are considered part of the state curriculum. No current event can technically be written into a curriculum because you don't know what's going to happen ahead of time. Everything happens currently. So nothing is being looked at when things are done in response to a current event. There's no assessment embedding in the curriculum when that happens. I find that really problematic. January 6th in particular, highly divisive, insanely hot-button topic that some of the original reporting on presented by the media turned out to be false. I don't know that they did that intentionally, I get that. But months later, we find out that some of the things that were initially reported were not correct. So for the school to have a knee-jerk response to the events that took place is inappropriate because media always gets something wrong. They don't intentionally need to do this, but as facts are released, our picture of what happened changes. And yes, some things about January 6th will never change. The fact that it was wrong, I get. But there were a number of key details that people got really upset about. I think we all agree that later adjustments were made to the story. I'm not going to go into specific details. I've written out some stuff, but it's too lengthy. But basically, when we say that teachers need to teach school news literacy and current events, I just don't trust the judgment of other people, any other people, with my children when it comes to that topic. What ended up happening here is that the schools had a reactionary knee-jerk response to an event that it was horrific, but the false reporting was problematic. Unfortunately, not only did they respond in a knee-jerk way, they did so poorly. Material was sent out that was highly divisive. Imagery, language against police officers and white people, not just white supremacists, all white people. My children had never even seen a Confederate flag. They wouldn't even know what it meant if they saw it. And I understand that most of the concerning material was sent only to parents, but that doesn't really matter because the lack of judgment was disconcerting. Random online posters, links, Facebook pages that were owned by openly racist people are not appropriate classroom resources. Even if they're sent to parents, it doesn't matter. If you looked at some of the Facebook links that were sent out, the comments written by the owner of the page were too vulgar to even repeat here. There was anti-Semitic comments, just comments about everyone that was just really, really concerning. A number of parents took screenshots. They're available if you want to review them. I don't know if they're still available online. They may have been deleted at this point. But the person who owned the site did not moderate them. I don't know that that means that they agreed with them, but they certainly didn't try to remove those comments, and in fact are making some of the comments themselves. So the school is not responsible for teaching my kids social justice. I am. The school is not responsible for teaching my children morality. I am. The school is not responsible for teaching my child anything but incontrovertible educational information. Everything else falls under the purview of parenting. My children belong to me. They are not our kids, they are my kids. And I think that schools, not just this one, but across the nation, have forgotten that fact. And the level of overreach in the school system is astounding. I can't even emphasize that enough. The emails that were released had a lot of concerning information in them. But amongst those are teachers disparaging their own family members for not voting a certain way, the labeling of certain parents in our town essentially as troublemakers because of their opinions, advocating for pushing people, other adults in our town, through peer pressure from the school system out of their comfort zones. There was advice from a therapist on how to gradually and subtly introduce upsetting imagery into a child's mind. There was the admission that Black Lives Matter material had been taught in the classroom, and although I do actually think that the original intent of that group was honorable, things have changed in the last year with that group. And because of the violence that has been done in their name, maybe not enacted by them, but in their name, that material is no longer appropriate for classroom teaching. There were authoritarian statements from principals showing disdain for parental concern and interference in classroom topics, saying that parents have no say in what children are taught in school. Wow. We're not talking about an impartial, dispassionate group of decision makers. They are human. Humans have biases. I am not going to hold that against them. I totally forgive them for that. But you can't use those biases on the kids, okay? Keep them to yourself. As a result, I do not want teachers or anyone in the school district deciding what current events are relative and how they should frame the teaching of those events. I don't find them trustworthy or competent in that disregard. And they upset at least one child we know through those emails, so much that that child had to be pulled from school that day. I will be teaching my children about these topics, and I would appreciate if you stayed out of how I do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kate. Ms. Downing.
Hi, Mary Ann Downing, Heather Drive. I want to get back to something you said at the start, Mr. Wise, about, there were like 280 emails and you found 8, and I'm very pleased that the superintendent has contacted the affected people. So what about the rest of the emails that, I was able to see that website at the time I learned about it. I moderate a social media group and someone posted a link and I took it right down because I knew there were children information. But I was looking at the emails and a lot of parents were expressing, well thought out but detailed information about their careers, their experiences, what they thought about this date, et cetera, with their email addresses. So maybe they weren't naming their children. They might have said, my child. So another parent looking at this who says, oh, I see Joe Smith. I know Joe Smith. Joe Smith is writing to the Killen principal. Hey, that maybe Susan Smith, that little child, is their kid. So that's of course a hypothetical, but people can figure out, oh, the parent of so-and-so is writing all of this. I think, without saying it was private information of the children, all of the parents whose information was released in a PRR, they might like to know their emails were out there on a website, because a lot of these parents were going into a lot of detail about their philosophies or about saying, I'm in law enforcement. I think one gentleman was involved in the Boston Marathon bombing. They were revealing a lot of personal information to teachers and principals, I thought. And they just might want to know that someone in town has this on a website. I know at least one gentleman, and I think my understanding is he was one of the people that went into the executive session. He wasn't writing about his kid, but his business and his reputation are being impugned on this website because of his private email to the former superintendent. So it might be worth notifying the other parents saying,
It wasn't your child's information, but just so you know, your email on this date was released. Because unless they know where this website is, they don't know that there's someone out there that is now possibly writing things about them, or the rest of town can go look and see what personal political concerns they've written to a teacher or principal. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Just a quick factual response, and then Tom, if you want to add to it as well. The inclusion of a student's name in an email is considered directory information, and therefore is not protected appropriately. Emailing the school system itself is also not protected because it's a public body. And so public records related request laws come into gear. That's just, it's an unfortunate fact to a degree, as it is, but that is the fact. Now, I think we can take your request under advisement and see if there's something we can do there, but I have to be careful of I think we should be careful of a slippery slope, because there are many public records requests that happen, and I don't know that it's, I'm going to stop there because I'm going more into opinion, but it is, the emails of parents are also not private. They're not covered by privacy rules. They're not covered by FERPA either. So those are the facts of it. And Tom, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Ms. Downing, I would just like to thank you for your feedback too, and I think as Tom shared, that's something that we will discuss and think about. I certainly think you have some valid points there. I would also like to go back to to the original point and just know that our administrative team looked through all of the emails and links, as did school committee chair, Mr. Wise as well. And then we cross-referenced and looked through them all together to make sure that we had sort of everyone that would possibly be sort of under a student record, and also looked at the ones that were more in a gray area with advisement from council as well. So I just wanted to know that that was a collaborative effort from both the school committee and the administration in that process of going through the website as well.
So maybe one, Mary Ann Downing, Heather Drive, one proactive suggestion going forward. Dr. Milszewski, on our website, typically they have a section, first day flyers, and there's all the FERPA things, and parents kind of just click through along with all the other acknowledgements. Maybe this is a learning time to not just tell parents, but staff, to encourage parents that, okay, your communications with us could be discoverable at any time, so we encourage you to call or something, because I think parents, this is a wake-up call to a lot of people. Maybe we all should know this, but I think a lot of people might not realize that if they don't specifically mention their kid, their email can be pulled because it's a public record. Thank you.
Thank you for the feedback.
I would add to that as well, one thing we discussed, and I would encourage each of the committee members to do, but we haven't agreed to it necessarily, and I can talk to Tom about it with the rest of the system, is adding to a signature line to each email that specifically says any email from or to this account is open to public records requests. And if you didn't receive it properly, blah, 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 right? So some of you have started seeing that from my signature line, and I'm going to suggest that we do the same. Ms. Cates, your hand was up again.
I'm sorry, I just had one question. I don't know, does the website have a box where you can like submit comments and stuff? Because if it's all public record anyway, it doesn't really matter if it goes to the school's website, right? But if there was a box there where you could submit questions and comments, you could select which teacher or person that you wanted it to go to, and then you would not necessarily have to enter your email address, and you can put your comments there, and then it would still be not anonymous, but they wouldn't have personal contact information.
I appreciate that idea, but I think it's a little bit of a slippery slope for other related reasons. They could be used inappropriately, either via a web crawler or via somebody that is with malicious intent sending something. So we'll have to look at our options, but I don't think that will frankly be one.
Understood, no problem.
Yeah. Ms. Haley?
I mean, Haley, 71 Tennis again. To echo Mary Ann's comment and to add to it, I'm outgoing treasurer of the PTO at Birch Meadow, and part of that could be a really good part of the enrichment night that the schools hold, is to discuss the email and how it's all public and go through all that as a quick rundown. I think it would be beneficial for all families, because including Autumn's mom, when we discussed this, with our daughter's mother, she also didn't know that this, anytime you email a teacher, it could be public requested. So I think that's a good learning. If we get anything out of this, it's a good learning tool for all families.
Thank you. Thank you. And I would agree that I think that the focus the committee took with a lot of the actions was lessons learned and things to do to improve things going forward. So we can continue to take other feedback in that fashion. Is there any other comment on this agenda item? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on, and thank you everybody for your passion. We were able to, meet and greet the constituents there. They had questions, answer questions. Of course, and I haven't actually talked to you about this song, but if you or anybody else in the administration team wants to join in, I think that would be awesome as well. But the brochure that's in your packet, just a brief update on what happened with that. Back in 2019 and 2020, we started working through that with this intent of using it for events like this, whether it's Town Day, which generally happens out here in Birch Meadow, or the Fall Street Fair. We went through various different iterations, and finally on February 6th of 2020, we came to a final conclusion. That conclusion was never really memorialized. So what you see is a version from the recitation of that meeting as it was going into that meeting. So it is edited to align to what was happening on February 6th, and it is edited to add each of the existing school committee members that are currently part of the body. One of the things that came out of that meeting was removal of the school year that it was covering, and instead providing an update date, which you see in the lower left of the first page, so that we don't have to theoretically redo this every year if the body doesn't change. The body changes, obviously, it's just on a yearly basis. So that's the introduction. Really kind of our last two topics on the agenda. And I'll open it up for questions, comments, feedback, edits if necessary. We can move away from there. So is there any other thoughts? Sean?
Fairly pedantic, but on the, I'm sorry, on the second page, the header of school committee meetings is also need to be in that section. The instruction isn't anywhere else. So I would just suggest something along the lines of inserting at the beginning of that first line, school committee meeting policies, which,
so duplicating the school.
yeah, it's a good thing. Like, for instance, we don't, under the school committee's job, say is to, X, Y, Z, right? So when I first read it, it was a little bit jarring to see the sentence pick up the sentence there.
Okay. Any other feedback on that or agreement? Making it at the top. All right. Any other? Sarah, do you have any feedback out there?
No, I'm excited. We can get back out there. I'm excited for Fall Street Fair coming up.
Okay. Any other edits to the brochure? All right. Sean, would you read the motion, please?
Sure. Move to approve the school committee brochure for the 2021-2022 school year.
Is there a second? Seconded by Aaron. Any further discussion? All right. Moving to the vote. Carla?
Aye.
Chuck?
Aye.
John? Aye. Aaron?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
Tom? Aye. 6-0 vote. And now to the conversation around the street fair itself. I reached out briefly to the street fair to make sure that we would be registering for the right thing if we agreed to register. And we would be registering as a nonprofit in the town of Reading. And the fee is included in the memo. So that fee would theoretically be coming out of our budget, not theoretically, actually, be coming out of the admin budget. We have a small school committee amount in there that we would be paying this out of. It would give us a 10 by 10 zone essentially on one of the streets. The last year we were on Haven. I think we do have the option to ask for a location if we want to be on any of the other streets as well. So I entertain conversations about that and whether this committee even wants to participate. Now's the time to have that conversation. Erin?
I feel like the last time we raised our hands at the same time, you deferred to me, so I don't know if you want to defer to Sean, but I love the idea of participating. I think it's great to, just be visible and let people come ask questions and engage. I think if we were going to request an area, it might be nice to be at least somewhat near. Sometimes there's like a kids zone, because then there'll likely be a lot of families nearby. I would suggest we have some sort of activity at our table, like kid-friendly activity, craft, something, so that if family members want to come and chat with us, they don't have younger ones yanking them the other way, speaking from experience. So I don't know how that works, like if that's something we have to discuss here, but I think we would need, something hands-on for kids at our table. But.
That's probably a good transition as an answer to that question into a portion of this meeting, which is going to be asking somebody to coordinate it on our behalf. And I was thinking of
Who are you?
Celebration-related person. I do want to be cautious, though, about purchasing a bunch of
Yeah,
for it,
I understand that.
and the budget impact of that, so I want us to think about that a little carefully. Chuck raises there might be liability issues that we have to be careful of there too, so we could certainly investigate and see what the options are, and then the coordinator can work to figure out the right answer.
Okay. No scissors, Chuck.
No scissors.
I said no scissors. I'd be happy to help coordinate. You spoke about being in shifts. Yeah, because I often work on Sundays, so I definitely couldn't be there the whole time, but I would be proud to do a shift, and I'd be happy to help coordinate.
Okay, that'd be great. Yeah, I was thinking it's a 5-hour thing, so if there's 6 of us, if we could each kind of overlap in like 2-hour sessions or something like that, or do 12 to 1, then come back to 4 to 5 or something, we can figure out what that schedule looks like. But ideally, each one of us, all 6 of us, do something to carry it collectively. So, Sean, you had some other feedback.
Yeah, 2 thoughts. My recollection, it was only 2 years ago, but it feels like a very long time ago, was that the school committee shared a booth with the select board, if I'm not mistaken.
We did.
I don't know whether those of you who participated in that had any thoughts about that. I actually think there's something kind of nice about that, because we don't often collaborate outside of our meetings, where we're not really getting to know each other at all. So that's number 1. And then number 2 is my recollection of that one as well, that booth was at the end of Haven Street, relatively close to the train station, if I'm not mistaken.
The top.
Oh, it was at the top? Okay. No, that's a good thing. I was going to say it's a good thing, because the band is definitely loud as you get close to the train station, so it's probably not ideal for what we're trying to achieve. So that's great.
Okay. Carla?
I am manning a work booth there, so if you would see if they could be next to each other, I'd be happy to help.
Okay. Any other comments, Sarah?
Yeah, I think if we can choose a location maybe that's by CPAC and maybe understanding disabilities or other school-related groups, that would be great. I think they've tended to be down on Haven towards High Street, which is a good location, although it tends to be a little bit loud. I think having all those kind of school-related groups in one area is really helpful.
So that is something we might be able to request, but there's no demanding that we can do there. And it would be up to the Rotary in terms of where they would place us, but we can certainly try to request to be near other school-related groups or anything else along those lines. Any other feedback or questions? Okay. So to Sean's, I think, question with regards to sharing with the select board, we could have that conversation. I kind of like the elegance of the school-related side of it, but I think it's worth looking at least from a cost-sharing perspective. I would defer, Aaron, if you're going to coordinate for us, if you wanted to manage that. If there's a beauty in it, that there would then be 11 people to man the booth instead of 6. So that's just something for us to think. And then Tom, Sarah, if you guys wanted to join us, then we can certainly, I'm seeing nods. So especially as a community getting to know session, that would be a good thing as well. So maybe there's 8 of us or, things along those lines to think through. So.
Great. Yeah, I'm planning on being there, so I'm happy to be at the table for a while. I'll also bring my own kids as well, so I might not be able to be there for too long. So I'll be there and then out and about. So, but count on me for a little while. I don't know about you, Dr. Hardy.
Yeah, I'd love to be there. Thank you.
Okay. One more plug as part of this, and I will ask our social media coordinators to re-plug this as well, is that the September 11th writing contest is still ongoing. Tom and I will be part of the 8 or 9 member judging panel for that contest. That will be a K through 5, 6 through 8, and 9 through 12 contest. We have on our current Facebook page the flyer that Gene Borowski had given us. If we can just push that out a little bit to the different community groups, that would be great. So with that said, Sean, do we have a motion?
Yes. Move to approve registration of and participation by the school committee in the 2021 Reading Rotary Fall Street Fair, inclusive of registration fees.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Aaron. Okay, any further discussion? Seeing none. Sarah?
Aye.
Aaron?
Aye.
Sean?
Aye.
Chuck?
Aye.
Carla?
Aye.
Tom? Aye. We have 6-0. And that brings us to the end, which is information and correspondence. And I'm aware that Ms. Lotario, I believe you have a comment on this section.
Yes, I think I'll probably go to the microphone.
Yes, please do, and please tell us your street as well.
Oh, yes, I live in Carroll, 22 Bedford Drive.
Former teacher.
First of all, I'd like to acknowledge and welcome our new superintendent to the school system and acknowledge Mr. Wise as the chairman and other members of the school committee as well. The purpose of my presence here this evening is to share with you my consternation, really, over 2 serious issues that have served us over the past several weeks. I'm requesting that my comments be entered into public record at your convenience. And for the sake of clarity and conciseness, I respectfully submit the following 2 points. Now, when I first came in, I apologize for being late because I come from Boston, from an appointment in Boston, and I actually spent a few minutes at the Reading Public Library looking for the committee. I had heard it was going to be at the library, but I wasn't sure which one. So I finally located it. It's been some years since I was in high school. So this was, I felt as if I were in a field trip trying to find this room. All right, so you probably have covered, which I have missed after being late, to be president of the meeting, and you probably have covered the first point that I'm going to mention, but I do want it to be on record. So I'm going to share with you my thoughts on point number 1. For an individual or group to seek, share, or publish private emails and medical information regarding parents and students attending the Reading Public Schools is anathema to the core principles of basic human decency and respect. The fundamental duty of public education is to provide a safe environment for student learning, including their physical, emotional, and social well-being. Many decent, upstanding Reading residents are extremely troubled, including myself, learning that the fundamental privacy rights of 274 private emails containing personal and medical information were viewed and exposed to public scrutiny. Any present or former select board member, present or former school committee member, of politically motivated Reading resident found in violation of the FERPA regulations by either promoting this website or not having done their due diligence by immediately removing the site should be held accountable. The bond of trust to protect our children and their parents' rights to privacy has been egregiously broken. In my judgment, this behavior
cannot be tolerated. I, as well as many parents in my district, and this is on point 2, I should have referenced that on point 2, I and many others have contacted me to address an issue that pertains to the toxic and divisive pressure to embrace critical race theory in grades K through 12 classrooms. CRT has already been banned in public school systems across the United States for the radical racial ideology, which defines and labels children according to the color of their skin. Recently, one of our schools in town, the Birch Meadow School, was one of 25 schools listed in the United States for purchasing a highly controversial book entitled Not My Idea by Anastasia Higginbottom. This was purchased for inclusion in our school library. The book should never be read aloud or promoted in any of our schools. Much of the vocabulary is totally inappropriate and contains noxious material that teaches children as young as kindergarten through grade 3 levels that, and I'm quoting right from the book, being white is having a pact with the devil, end of quote. And the color of your skin predetermines that a white child is born into a culture of inherent racism. Not only does it inflict white guilt upon our children, but it also diminishes and demeans our brave policemen and women. The final pages of the book are the most disturbing, stating in capital letters, and I quote, "Whiteness is a bad deal. It always was. Dude, we can see your pointy tail." End of quotation. You may know that in Greek and Roman literature and mythology, a pointy tail refers to the devil, an evil figure, an enemy of religion, particularly Christianity. Is this what we want to teach our children? Parents are not on board with this destructive messaging. This book must never be part of our curriculum and read aloud to impressionable and innocent children, whom I know from personal experience do not view the color of anyone's skin as a determinant. I respectfully submit that it is incumbent upon the school committee members and our superintendent to do due diligence by reviewing and rejecting literature that divides our students. Oversight of curricular material is an absolute necessity to prevent destroying the self-confidence and the self-esteem of all our children, regardless of the color of their skin. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ontario. Okay, we've reached the end of our agenda. Is there any other comment before we adjourn? We will take a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Seconded by Carla. We'll do a roll call. Carla?
Aye.
Chuck? Aye. Sean? Aaron?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
And Tom? Aye. 6-0. Thank you, everybody. Have a good rest of the evening.
Thank you.